The Holy Gospel of our Savior Jesus Christ according to Matthew.
Glory be to thee, O Lord.
As Jesus was walking, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And Jesus said to Matthew, "Follow me." And Matthew got up and followed him. And as Jesus sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" When he heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." While Jesus was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader of the synagogue came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind Jesus and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter. Your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house, he saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion. He said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, Jesus went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread throughout that district. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise be to thee, O Christ.
Are you ready for a blast from the past? Let's see how well you can remember something from the playground days of elementary school. May I use your shoulder for a second, Gail?
Yes.
See if you guys can finish. Circle, circle, dot, dot. Does anybody know? Do you remember doing this? Circle, circle, dot, dot. Now you've got the cootie shot. Can you remember it now? You guys didn't say that?
No.
Were there cooties on the playground?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there were many different versions of getting the cootie vaccination on the playground, and this was merely one of them. Cooties is a fascinating thing because, can we all agree, it's entirely invisible and made up? And yet super powerful for the children who are in the cootie game. Oh my gosh, everybody, Russ has cooties! What does that make you want to do? Run and scream! Ah! Does it make you want to go up a jungle gym? Get away from Russ! Meanwhile, Russ is running around trying to give everybody cooties. You probably know, if you've done you may have heard along the way, that cooties originated as a concept in World War I in the trenches. That there were body lice that the soldiers would get, extremely painful, and you just have to say lice to know extremely contagious. No one quite knows where the word came from, but it might be a Malaysian word that someone had heard about in the trenches. There's a kuto or something like that in Malaysian that means body lice. Well, one way or another, that was cooties. And I'm not sure how it went from World War I soldiers to the playground, but this idea of contagion was perhaps such a powerful thing that it was bound to spread as an idea. Because human beings have some deep aversion inside of us to any kind of contagion. Scholars who study this will say that there's a number of maybe 5 or 6 different foundations of our moral life. And one of them is loyalty to your people. One of them is following authority. One of them is fairness. These are like deeply ingrained things that are almost sort of natural inside of us and just flower into reality. People naturally want to be loyal. They naturally, at some point, want to identify an authority and follow. And one of these things that just naturally comes forth is this idea of purity. Purity, of wanting to stay away from those who are unclean. Anthropologists will tell us it probably comes from way back in our history when, you touched a leper and you got it. So the people who had an aversion were more likely to be healthy and to have offspring. That people who had bodily discharges or who were bleeding or or people who had died, that you would want to stay away from them and not touch them for this very same reason. You may not know this either, but the word Pharisee actually means a separation, to be separate. And the whole concept of being a Pharisee was to take this idea of purity, which, to be fair, was deeply embedded in the laws of Moses. There is a lot of laws of Moses about purity. And some of them are physical, and some of them are social, and some of them are racial. Lots of concepts about purity in the laws of Moses. And the Pharisees were the people who decided to follow them all. And so they were separate. Who were they separate from? All of the gross people. Right? All of the people with cooties of all different kinds. And the Pharisees were separate from them. And they had their cootie shot. Weren't going to be caught anywhere near anyone who had violated any of the laws. And why? Because even socially, you hang out with people who like to gamble. Maybe the next thing you know, you're gambling. Gambling's not the worst thing in the world, but it is highly addictive. So watch out. Maybe a better example. You hang out with people doing heroin. Before long, you're doing heroin. All right? You hang out with people who like death metal, and pretty soon you like death metal. And maybe that's okay. I don't know. I don't listen to death metal. But there's something about hanging out with people, and that becomes your crowd. Sometimes in middle school, parents will come to me and they'll say, I think my kids have gotten into the wrong crowd. And I feel like I don't have long to get them out of that crowd before perhaps they end up there and end up with all kinds of practices and behaviors that will end up being bad for them. Even a social contagion, people who think those things. This is what's so powerful about today's gospel, is that today's gospel is full of people with cooties. They all have cooties of different kinds. Matthew's got Roman Empire cooties. He's a Jewish person who's given himself over to Rome and become an agent of Rome to take Rome's taxes, the occupier. And he's working for them. Don't hang out with Matthew. The sinners that Jesus is having dinner with, we can only imagine what their sins were. A whole bunch of moral failings in the eyes of anyone who would judge. We've got the woman with hemorrhages. God bless her, poor woman, what suffering she must have gone through. And she was an agent of contagion. Not of her fault. But the laws of Moses said that anyone who has blood flowing out past the natural period of time that should be is ritually unclean. Imagine being the contagious person in your village. And no one will touch you. You come into the room and everyone just backs out, because if they accidentally touch you, they've got to go to the temple, they've got to make a sacrifice, they've got to be separate from their community for 7 days, they need to use the ashes of a red heifer to make themselves clean. Nobody wants to be near the woman with hemorrhages, and no one wants to touch even a child who has died. except Jesus goes into every single one of those circles. If you remember one thing, I want you to remember this. Jesus works the opposite direction of contagion. When Jesus touches illness, the illness gets Jesus, not vice versa. And this is kind of a wild thing, because think about cooties of all the different sorts. It always goes one way. We're afraid that if our children hang out with people who do heroin, they're going to end up doing heroin. We don't think, oh, it's how great that our child's hanging out with people doing heroin. Maybe they'll all become like our kid. Right? Contagion in our minds goes one way. You touch somebody who's a leper, they don't get clean, you get leprosy. It always goes one way. This is why the Pharisees, if they wanted to be pure, they had to cut themselves off from everyone and become separate. And we know what that looks like. If you've ever blocked someone from your social media feed, you know what that looks like. I'm cutting you off. I'm now separate. I can't have your words in my community. I can't have those ideas in my world. Why? Because they're going to make me unclean. They make me upset. They offend my sensibilities. I've got to become separate. I've got to be cut off. And Jesus operates the opposite direction every single time. Jesus understands that God working in him works through him to be a holy contagion. What would that be? I think sanctity, right? You touch someone ill, you get it, it's contagious and you get it. Jesus touches someone, he brings sanctity, he makes them holy. Jesus is never worried about getting sick. He's never worried about getting influenced by those people. He always goes to them because he knows that God working in him is going to work the opposite direction. Jesus comes to Matthew, and here I want you to imagine, what is it like to be Matthew? Everybody hates you. Everybody's cut you off from their Facebook page. Nobody wants to talk to you anymore. You're doubled down on Rome because you don't have anyone else who will talk to you. And Jesus breaks the boundary and comes and blesses you and talks to you and calls you to himself. By George, of course, Matthew stands up and follows. And Jesus' sanctity imprints on to Matthew. By being with him, Matthew becomes more holy. Jesus goes to the sinners in the house, and he's talking to them. And the Pharisees say, why would you possibly do that? And Jesus says, go and understand what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. The whole point here is not to judge these people, but to have mercy and to have grace, to bring goodness into the circle that it might imprint onto them. Jesus believed that God's power was working through him to bring light, through him to bring grace. And other people recognize it. The leader of the synagogue is the hero of today's gospel, because he comes into the house of sinners. Why? To call Jesus into his world. For him, he's not so worried about purity that he won't help his daughter. He's not so worried about getting cooties that it would keep him from seeking help for someone who he loves. He walks right into the room just like Jesus did, walks right up to Jesus and says, I believe you can help me. Please come, talk, and come to my daughter. And Jesus honors him and says, absolutely. You recognize what's true about me. You understand that when I touch death, I don't get dead. That when I touch something that is dead, I don't get sick. You understand that when I come into the presence of death, death gets me. And when I touch someone who's dead, they get life. And so Jesus begins to follow. And the woman with hemorrhages, also the hero, who sees Jesus and knows that he can imprint life on her. She touches the fringe of his cloak probably for his benefit. Probably just so that he won't get too much of this idea. Maybe no one will notice. Maybe no one's going to call him unclean. But Jesus turns around and blesses her and she gets healing. And he goes and touches the child, and the child stands up and lives. There is a deep truth here for us. And really, I guess it's a question I want to ask you, which is the light of God strong enough in you? Are you lit up bright enough to have confidence to know that you could go into a dark place and it can become full of light? That God can work through you to bring life into dark places, life into dead places, healing into broken places. Are you confident enough? Do you feel full enough of the grace of God to have courage to go across the aisle to the other side to shine love there? Not to be afraid that you're going to get that. Not to be afraid that you'll be contaminated by that. Not to be worried that your purity will be lost, but to trust that crossing that line, that which is good in you will imprint there, and that you don't have to be afraid. It's what today's gospel is calling us to do. And it's what Jesus at the end of the gospel, after the resurrection, literally calls us to do. When he stands up on the mount, we heard last week, and he says, go into all nations. It's exactly what he's asking us to do, including Matthew, the one he just called. He's saying, get up and go. Go to the dark places. Go to the hard places. Go to those places that are challenging. Go out there and trust that I will shine through you. We see it in Abraham as well. Circle, circle, dot, dot. Now you've got the cootie shot. There's something about that in baptism. There's apparently another one. Circle, circle, square, square. Now you've got it everywhere. May that be true for you in Christ. Circle, circle, square, square. Now you've got it everywhere.